Hello and welcome to Check 1 2, a Cahonas podcast, where we're giving you the lowdown on testicular cancer by talking to survivors, advocates and supporters of testicular cancer awareness here at the world famous podcast studio Glasgow. So today my first guest is not just a survivor, he's a writer, actor and master of stand-up comedy. So he's out there proving that it really was well worth the chemo, and with his new stand-up routine is really showing that you can laugh in the face of adversity. The one, the only, Michael Shafar. How's the show been going anyway? Has it been going down pretty well?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, Edinburgh was fun, and then I just did it in Zurich last week.
Right.
And particularly when I go to like mainland Europe, I'm always interested like what's going to travel, like what will people get and not get. But yeah, they got it all. It was great.
Yeah.
They were really fun. And then I did it in London on Thursday, and they were great. That was really fun. So yeah, it's been going good. I'm doing it in Paris next week. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, like every time, like every city I go to, you kind of work out, you know, what works, what doesn't work, you know? Yeah.
So I take it you're headlining when you're going to these places as well? Like
yeah. So when I went to Zurich, they put on a show for me.
Right.
And they had like two people opening, and then I did my show. I did like the full 50 minutes or whatever at the end. Yeah, and then in London I had in London same thing, and Paris same thing. It's a nice way to do it.
Yeah.
It's because I like to see the openers as well.
Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting for me to see like, you know, who are the comedians in Zurich and what do they talk about? Yeah. And same thing with like Paris or whatever.
Because it's not somewhere that I could say is known for its comedy as Zurich.
Not at all.
You know,
mind you, but like it's building. Like they've got there's a couple of guys there who are like trying to establish an English speaking comedy scene. Right. There's a bit of like a German one and like a bit of a French one.
Okay.
In Switzerland, but yeah, now they're trying to build up an English one because they've got because there's big comedians now coming through Europe and they're adding Zurich to their itineraries. Like I think Jim Jeffries was in there recently. You know, did like the theatre in Zurich. Like Tom Segura also when it came into the theatre. So I think there is a bit of like momentum.
Yeah, I don't think there was anywhere Tom Segura didn't do this year as well.
Man, he was everywhere.
Yeah, literally coming everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, what a great good name for a tour. Just kind of sets up what he's doing.
Yeah.
Did you see him?
No. I wish I did, but I didn't get the opportunity to. But man, I wish I did. Like the next time he's over, which is probably going to be in another 10 years.
I mean, it's such an effort for them to do these like world tours. Yeah. But I feel like, I imagine he wouldn't. I imagine when he's touring his next show, he'll come and do it all again.
Hopefully, I think he got a good reception in the UK and things like that.
I'm sure he sold like crazy.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure he'll be back within probably 3 years. I would have thought.
Yeah. Well, he's starting a new hour anyway, so hopefully, you know that kind of comes across here. We've seen Louis. We've seen CK when he came here.
Yeah. Glasgow or Edinburgh?
Glasgow.
Yeah, great.
Just at the OVO, and man, that was a good gig.
Man, the Glasgow. I mean, I've only done one gig in Glasgow. It was last night. Good crowd. Man, the place was rammed, and they're just like there's this energy to them. Yeah, real. There's this. The word is leery, I think, is what you guys say in
Very
the UK.
Much so, yeah.
There's this real leeriness to the crowd. It's like there's it's excitement, but there's also this like hint of violence as well in the air.
Very much so, yeah.
And it's just like a fun thing to play with. Yeah, I found it very interesting. I haven't really. I think in particular you get that like in the north, like Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow. You get that.
Yeah, anything past the Watford Gap, you're going to find there's that difference of
interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I found that. It was just interesting, kind of like, you know, people have told me that Glasgow is like a really great comedy town, and it was like just cool to see it in action. Yeah.
So you touring your new stuff? Are you still doing the well worth the chemo, or is it a new hour, or you kind of?
I'm working some new stuff. Yep. So I didn't do like my show last night. I just did like a 20-minute set at the stand. And when I do that, it's just kind of like that's when I try to work in some new stuff as well. You know, try to do some local stuff too, just to keep it interesting. Yeah. But it's also a bit, because it's like my first time doing a club.
Yep.
I also need to make sure that I do well.
Yeah, of course.
It's always annoying. It's like I always like to go around. I'd love to go up and just like fuck around.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I should probably get a few
love
laughs.
me.
Yeah, so they book me again. But yeah, no, it was really fun. It's a great club. Yeah, have you been?
Yeah, I've been at the stands. Yeah. It's a great club. Good space. Like, in terms of
perfect for comedy. Just like because that's what you need. You need like a bit of like this is underground, like kind of like little like dingy. There's this grime and this grunginess to it.
Yeah.
Comedy shouldn't be in a nice place.
No.
It should be in like a bit of a shit place.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the sound's a shit place, but it's like it's just got it's not too nice, which is important.
Yeah.
Like I've done clubs where it's like a beautiful theater or whatever, and it's like people are too serious. People take it too seriously.
It's so different as well. I think like it always seems that like the comics' reactions have to be a little bit kind of off as such because the laughter takes a while to go backwards.
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden, you've hit your punchline, but the people at the back are still laughing.
Yeah. You have to like sit. You have to wait for people to get it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Comedy should always be in like a pub, a bar, something that's like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my take on it. As soon as you try to make it too sophisticated, some of the magic gets lost.
Yeah, and it's theatres and drive-thrus and
yeah. It's like, what are we doing here?
So,
Anyway.
what I was going to ask you as well is like, with the kind of material that you've kind of been talking about, you kind of coming to the end of want to talk about your cancer story in your comedy, because you've been doing it. How many shows?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably like 2 shows because like, I mean, the first time I spoke about it was when I first got diagnosed.
Yeah. And
then I had like, then I kind of started talking about other stuff and then I had like a relapse. So I was like, well, kind of got to talk about this again a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sick of it, but I'm looking forward to like just writing new stuff.
Yeah.
Because you never want to be like pigeonholed.
Yeah. You don't want to be the cancer comic.
Yeah. You don't be like, oh, that's the single testicle comic over there. So yeah, I think, I mean, I just write about, whatever I'm going through in my life and like whatever is happening in the world at the time. So yeah, I'm always like writing new stuff. And like, look, if like, something happened, related to my cancer, like I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But, if like, put it this way, if I don't talk about cancer ever again on stage, that means my health is great and things are good. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but I like talking about it. It's not. I certainly don't get sick of it. I thought I would, but yeah, I don't get sick of it because it's one of the few things I talk about where it's like so universal.
Yeah,
everyone knows about cancer. Everyone knows about balls. So there's a So I find it interesting just how it does. I could do those. I can talk about this stuff probably any English speaking country.
Yeah.
And it'd be. I could probably translate the jokes into other languages. They probably still work. Yeah.
Because I always found that like, see, after I had been through my cancer, I always felt like my mates are going to be sick of me going, well, when I was going through treatment, or just talking about even making my own jokes about myself.
Yeah.
And then you watch like yourself up on stage, you're like, God, like are they? Does he not get sick of his own self? So it's interesting to hear that it's still something that isn't too bad.
I get sick of like material, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like if I've been doing a bit for a while and like I know it works, I know it gets a laugh, I'm just like I don't it's not exciting anymore. It's not fun anymore. So that just happens with all my material.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if it gets a laugh, I'm like, yeah, but I know that was going to work. I want to try something else. So yeah, I feel that way a bit about the cancer material because I'm like, well, I know this works. I know people laugh at it and whatever. So I want to try something else or try a new angle on it or something. But that's not because I'm sick of talking about cancer. That's just because like I just get bored of my own material.
Bored of your own material.
Yeah.
So was it something that you felt was cathartic when you started doing it anyway? Like, because were you going through treatment when you first started doing jokes about it as well?
Yeah. So I started, it's an interesting timeline. Like I started treatment end of October in 2017 and I didn't do like comedy for a few months because I was like, still just like, I was pretty busy doing chemo. But yeah, then I got to the point where I was like, well, normalcy is really important when you're going through treatment. That's what I found. I was like, I just really enjoy the days where like I could just have a regular day
Yeah.
and not be in hospital feeling like shit or whatever. And I was like, well, for me, normal is going out and doing gigs. And it just happened to be that I was, bald at the time because I was in between rounds of chemo and I looked like shit.
Yeah.
I'd feel good, but I looked awful. And so I was like, well, I want to do gigs, but I'm going to have to address the fact that I clearly am doing chemo right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's weird. Everyone's like, wait, what? Like, why did the Make-A-Wish kid come here tonight? You know what I mean? So, it was just out of necessity that I had to talk about it. Just because when you walk on stage, you look like that. I don't know, like if someone walks on stage and they're missing a leg or something, everyone's waiting for them to mention the missing leg. Do you know what I mean? So,
although I've seen you with your bald dude, there's a quite an infamous picture of you like shirtless where you're rubbing your head.
You
look all right. It's like,
was I pulling it off?
I thought you looked like kind of Deadpool Ryan Reynolds, but I looked more like Uncle Fester when I was going through treatment. So it's like I was looking at you going, bastard.
That's good to know because what's annoying because I did notice I've got a bit of a bald patch coming through.
Oh, right.
So it's good to know that when the time comes, I'll be able to pull off bald if I have to.
No, you definitely suited it.
I appreciate that. Yeah. That's just kind of So I just I was doing gigs during chemo and I just was forced to talk about it.
Yeah. At least it was pre-pandemic as well, because then that would have been something quite spectacular to kind of want to do whilst going through treatment and then going into clubs and stuff. So at least you didn't have that to contend with as well.
Yeah, that's true. So that was when I was first diagnosed. I was in 2017, but I did have a relapse. When I had my relapse, it was during the pandemic. So, but it was really funny because there was nothing to do during the pandemic. So everyone was just like, "Well, I've got nothing to do," and I'm like, "Well, if I'm gonna have a relapse, at least do it now." When there's nothing else on, you know what I mean? Because one of the hard things about going through treatment the first time was just seeing everyone else's lives. Everyone else is just still living their life, and and you compare, and you're like, you get jealous and you get upset. You feel like you're missing out on everything. So mentally that was hard, and then everyone else's lives have stopped. So I'm like, well. There's not like there's any opportunities or gigs I'm missing out on from doing the chemo right now. So that was mentally maybe a little bit easier in some respects.
It's just such a weird thing as well, like to think that you had went through your chemo, you had went into remission, and then to be told in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was it just a kind of normal checkup, or did you feel unwell?
Well, I just kind of went in for my regular scan because we were doing scans every 3 to 6 months at the time. And I kind of went into the scan feeling I feel like it's just feeling pretty good, whatever. But the thing is you don't really have symptoms if it's such a small thing. So they had and then when I did the scan, they detected there was a mass still in my stomach that was very small, wouldn't be causing me any symptoms. And they were like, okay, we're just going to cut it out. We hope that it's just cause sometimes you get you can get a benign regrowth sometimes. It doesn't necessarily mean it's malignant.
About a 9.5.
Sorry?
About a 9.5.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. Try to out-comic the comic.
No. Throw in the love. Let's get as many laughs as we can. So anyway, so they detected that and they cut it out and they're like, okay, there's cancer, there's actual real cancer in here, and we're going to have to do more chemo. So that's how I found out. So and now I still do checkups, and obviously there's that anxiety still about every time I go in for a checkup. But look, I kind of feel really good. I feel really healthy. I feel like, I like to think that I would know if something was wrong. Because when I did go in for that checkup, I felt good, but I did notice I had a bit of a niggle in my back, and sometimes having back pain for me was a symptom.
Yeah.
So that kind of I was a bit anxious. I was a little bit anxious going into that one, probably maybe more so than normal. But anyway, I guess my point is, when I'm feeling healthy and I'm feeling good, I'm going to gym every day and I'm eating well, etc. It helps me reduce the anxiety around the upcoming scan.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I feel good. I don't think there's anything, they're going to find anything. And if they do, at least it can't be anything too severe because I feel great. You know what I mean? So I'll probably have that anxiety at least for the next, year or two while we're still scanning relatively frequently.
Yeah.
But
I found that, see when, in fact, my wife would probably say agree with me. Like, see the week kind of coming up to my scan, you could see my mood just slowly starting to creep down.
Man, that's so relatable to me. So what happens to you?
So it was just that being insular. You know, I like to think I'm quite kind of outgoing, and you know, and but certainly see that time, you know, you could just I just wanted to sleep and hide away. I didn't really want to socialise because I was just feeling that anxiety. About kind of going into the hospital. And the days that I was going into hospital, I found, like, you know, panic attack's such a kind of overused term, but it's certainly, you know, I found myself like, I don't know if I can walk in here. You know, and really forcing the point to walk in. So I suppose it's like, you know, do you face something similar in that type of anxiousness, I suppose? Yeah,
for sure. It's like, it's really funny because, like, you know, I try to be very mindful now of like my emotions and my moods and stuff. And sometimes I'll be like, why am I in such a shit mood today? And sometimes I'll be like, I think I just didn't sleep much. I got bad, I slept last night, or maybe I just haven't eaten for, you know, a few hours or whatever. But then I'll be like, it's because I'm doing a scan in 3 days. You know what I mean? And then I'll be like, and it's just that thing that I know is going to come up in a few days, and there's this subconscious worry happening at the back of my mind, and I'm like, that's why I'm in a bad mood. I don't really know how else. I don't know how you deal with it. I just try to distract myself as much as possible. It's like, I mean, there's nothing I can like do. You know, I have to go for the scan, and we just have to see what happens. You know what I mean? So there's nothing I can like do to prepare for any better. So I just try to distract myself. I'm like, okay, let's just fill the day with, you know, work commitments and social commitments or whatever. Just, you know, let's just kind of keep myself as distracted as much as I can until I go in for the scan, and then I'll do the scan, and then I'll try to distract myself again for another day or two until the results come back. I mean, I'm not sure if that's the healthiest way to deal with it, but I'm just like, if I just keep myself busy, then that helps me kind of not think about the anxiety of it.
I was probably healthier than mine. My focus was always on, there's a wee cafe like that in Glasgow called the Tribeca Cafe. And it's like New York style food. So my aim was always be, I'm going to go and get my scan. I'm going to go and eat a hefty load of pancakes. As you can see, you know, you
got to do your post-scan pancakes. You got to do your celebratory pancakes post-scan.
You know, so I was always looking for the celebration of, no, it's okay, Paul.
That's fine. That's great. You got to. I mean, every time I get a good scan, me and my wife, we go for like a dinner. We're like, we got to celebrate the wins. You know what I mean? You got to take the W's. That's what I say. So we took a lot of losses over a few years. So whenever there's a W, whenever you get through a milestone, you get through a scan, you get through a blood test or whatever. You got to celebrate that.
You got to. I think when I got my all clear, I'm sure me and my wife went out for dinner, like as a celebration of such.
I'd go on holiday. Let's go to Greece. Let's do it.
So were you married or with your wife at the time when you got diagnosed?
We've been together for about what was it, maybe like 8 or 9 years when I first got diagnosed. We weren't married, but we've been together for quite a long time. And then and then, like, you know, I was, you know, I wanted to get married, but I was like, I kind of wanted to feel good about my health before, we did that. So then we got married end of last year, where we felt like we had a bit more stability in our lives, and we felt a bit more confident about our future and everything. So I mean, we had to have some hard conversations about that, you know, because she was like, I don't want to, it's grim stuff, but she was like, you know, I don't want to be a widow. I don't want to get married and then be a widow. And I was like, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I was like, let's deal with this, you know, as best we can, and then we'll move on with our lives. So that was something that we had to talk about and, you know, be really honest about and mature about. And obviously, we still have to think about my health quite a bit, but at least we think about it in, like, you know, 3 to 6 month increments instead of, you know, course, a daily thing. And she's really great. She's, you know, she always reminds me to be grateful of just, you know, I'll complain about, you know, something stupid like, I'm doing this gig and then they're running late, or I'll just complain about, you know, benign little things. And then she'll be like, but you know, you could be dead. You know what I mean? I'm like, you know, I'll be like, the Edinburgh show tonight wasn't very good. She's like, but you know, 3 years ago, like, the idea of you doing Edinburgh was just like not even a possibility. So yeah, she's great. She really keeps me. She's got great perspective.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think as well, it's like, it's a perspective that you don't hear often talked about, like when, you know, people talk about cancer, especially guys who have had testicular cancer, that there is that other side if you have a partner. And like, the conversation that you've had with your wife, that's one I've never even thought about, the fact that, you know, like, you know, long term, does this affect our relationship as well? Like, you know, get married, you know, be a widow and things like that. You know, because I mean, the one that certainly that we had to have was, we were trying for like another kid at the time, and obviously, like, you know something wrong when you're kind of not falling pregnant. And then when we found out that we were, it was like, that was the biggest impact on my wife, was like, is this my shot of being a mother again done? As well, you know. So like, the fertility thing's always quite a conversation that, and when I'm out and doing talks, there's guys who are, like, you know, in their early 20s, or, you know, or teenagers, they're not going to think about their fertility. Nobody really does until they want to kind of have kids as well. So I mean, is that, without being kind of too personal, is that something that you guys have had to discuss as well? And
yeah, well, I mean, like, so before, you know, I started treatment, I went to the IVF clinic and had to jerk off into a cup. So, which I think is pretty standard procedure now for like men who go through kind of any chemo, because just that's the impact chemo can, just any kind of chemo can affect your fertility. So yeah, but it was just weird that we had to even like think about, you know, if we wanted kids, because we were like, we'd never even spoken about it. And now we're forced to think, okay, well, are we ever going to want to have kids? And I guess, you know, we got to do this to, you know, give us that option. Yeah.
Because then you've got to sign a consent form as well for your wife to use it if you die.
Yeah, that's some grim shit as well. Yeah. And then you're looking at this form and you're like, and my Amanda was like, okay, so can I use your sperm to like have a kid if you die? I'm like, phew.
How do you even like, if you're together in a long-term relationship, how do you answer that question, you know?
I was like, I mean, I'm dead, so you can do whatever you want, I guess. Like, that was like my reaction. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, you could have the option. Like, I don't care. Yeah. If you want to recreate some of this, go for it. Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy to have that conversation. It's crazy, yeah, because it's such a bizarre, you know, you think it's usually just like a thought experiment. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, we actually have to make a decision and sign a contract and put a name to it. Yeah, it's very, very strange stuff. But yeah, it does, again, it really forces you to like think about your priorities in life. You know, we're kind of lucky that we don't really want to have kids, which is like kind of like fortunate. So like, I mean, yeah, neither of us are kind of like I'm not very paternal. She's not very maternal. So yeah, I mean, fortunately that hasn't been like a huge, I guess, talking point for us. But I imagine for other couples, you know, it would be like a really big kind of thing. Yeah.
I think the one thing you never really saw, I think because, you know, guys don't have these types of conversations anyway. You know, it's like when you look across even any kind of social media or YouTube, wherever, you don't really hear guys talking about testicular cancer. They don't talk about their fertility. They don't talk about all these things. And like, that's what, like, as Cahonas, we're trying to do, is try to kind of break down that stigma. So to be able to kind of have these conversations, you know, would have helped. See, if my wife always says that if she had seen our story from somebody, she wouldn't have been as worried. Because like, but nobody ever talks about it. And I think, you know, it's great to be able to kind of get even both sides of the coin of that. Like, yeah, like you guys, you know, don't want to have kids, but the option's there for you if you do.
Yeah, and you got to have the option. Yeah. Might as well have it.
Yeah. And then for us, you know, it was that looking at, well, are we in a place where we need to go to IVF and all that type of thing because of the treatment? And it's quite a big deal. And I think, you know, hearing stories like this and guys talking about it, you know, I think the hope is that it really helps, you know, even, you know, the wives and partners of guys who are going through it as well. Hopefully, anyway, you know.
No, I think so. I mean, there's not a lot of, I'm not sure what it's like in the UK or in Scotland, but, you know, there's not a lot of like resources, you know, that are like people first-hand accounts from people talking about this stuff. Yeah. And I feel like, you know, I don't know, a podcast like this where, you know, if someone who's been recently diagnosed or has a partner or whatever who has been, I imagine this would be quite useful.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine hearing us talk about this would be quite useful.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we can offer some sort of use to people in that regard, you know?
It's and I think it's such an important thing as well, you know, it's to be able to kind of just take that stigma away. I think you'll be aware of this as well, like Lance Armstrong, I don't think in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a yellow wristband on everybody's wrist.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I find interesting about the Lance Armstrong legacy, because people are like, you know, I can't believe that guy, like, you know, cheated and, you know, whatever, undermined the sport of cycling. And obviously that is bad. But also, he raised so much money.
Yeah.
For it's like I'm so conflicted by that, because like you could possibly like his research helped me live.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't care if he was injecting EPO.
No.
I feel like that pales in comparison to the work that he did for his charity.
Lots of medals, life saved, you know.
I mean, obviously, like, he's not I'm putting it this way, I don't think he's like a good person, probably. He seems like an absolute psychopath. But I still think overall his contribution to humanity is way bigger than what most people may do.
I mean, you know, there's no doubt there to say that, you know, now guys who were in the kind of stage of treatment that I was only get one round of chemo, whereas I had to go through two. So, but who's to say that, you know, if it wasn't like research for the Livestrong Foundation that helped guide that,
100%,
you know, so that guys weren't quite as floored with chemotherapy or radiotherapy at that matter as well. So.
Well, exactly. I mean, I watched his documentary when I think I was going through chemo, and I was like, I was like so inspired by it. I was like, this is my hero. I don't care. I don't care how many injections he was taking in the back of a ute on through the mountains of France. I find him to be a fascinating character for sure.
Oh, he really is. I watched the documentary and I was much like yourself. I was so conflicted over him.
Yeah,
because, I mean,
I'm not conflicted. The man's a hero.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, see this, and people can go, but he did this. It's like, but so did the 15 other guys that were behind him as well.
Can I just say, you know, like, I mean, obviously he was probably the worst of the cheaters, but they're all cheating. Mm-hmm. They're all cheating. Yeah. And let's be honest, the other ones who cheated, they weren't raising money for cancer on the side. So I'm just saying, I think the real villains are the guys who cheated and didn't raise money for cancer.
Second to 15th place are the real
Fuck those guys. That's what I'm exactly. That's really where I want to get to in this podcast.
Listen, Lance, we love you. But it's such an interesting thing, and I never even really thought about it in that regard, that, you know, his research would have added to, you know, guys like you and I across the world, you know, receiving different types of
100%,
treatment.
100%.
I never even thought of that. Never crossed my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
I suppose it's an interesting thing as well that all the kind of the stuff that we kind of talk about and go through as men as well. So the kind of biggest thing was with your treatment. You know, you talk about your anxiety, you talk about things like that. Did you have any struggles with your mental health after your treatment, or was it just something that is just kind of slightly there as such anyway? Yeah,
I mean, I'm always a bit like, I'm always a bit like concerned. This might sound bad, but I'm concerned about like the over medicalization of mental health. Mm-hmm. Like I'm concerned about the way in which people are diagnosed with a condition when it's just a natural response to their circumstances.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not, of course, like there are real mental health diseases, mm-hmm. you know, that are chemical and genetic and whatever.
Yeah.
But then there's just, you know, sometimes people are anxious and people are sad and depressed because their circumstances are anxiety inducing and stressful and depressing circumstances.
Yeah.
So
which is most of the population, that's
which is most of, I mean, we're in Scotland right now. It's pretty, I got up here and I'm like, geez, it's pretty grey. It's pretty dreary. No wonder people come out to comedy clubs here. They need a laugh. Yeah. But, so, you know, like when I was going through treatment, obviously like it was very challenging mentally, and it was very tough. But that was just a normal reaction to what I was going through. It would be bizarre to not kind of have that downness. And I was lucky that, you know, I had an amazing partner and a family, and friends who, were very supportive, and I had a great network around me, and without them, it would have been so much harder. So, but yeah, I don't think I would ever say that I had like, a mental condition at the time.
Yeah.
Nor would I say that afterwards do I have something you could diagnose me with, other than just being, I mean, when you're going when you're going every few months to find out if your cancer's coming back, and even though it's unlikely, you still have to be ready for that possibility, even though it might be remote.
Yeah.
You still got to, that's something you still think about. I mean, like, of course you're going to be anxious. It would just be insane not to feel anxious or stressed. So yeah, I just try to think of, try to notice it coming up in my head. I try to make sure that, I'm aware of what I'm feeling at the time, and try to have things in place to help me deal with that.
Yeah.
And that's just, how I approach it.
Yeah.
Whereas, I get worried when, people start going on, I don't know, they start taking drugs or medications, and they start to like define themselves by their mental health conditions. I think that's particularly unhealthy. And again, that's not, I know this will be controversial, but this is just what I believe deep down, is that, there are natural responses to your circumstances.
Yeah, for sure.
And you just deal with the circumstance. It doesn't mean that you're depressed or you have anxiety, and doesn't mean you should be defined by that either.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how kind of like, I'm not sure if that was kind of what you were kind of thinking about, but yeah, those are my thoughts on that topic.
Yeah.
Which is that, if you get cancer, you should be sad and you should be anxious and you should be miserable. It sucks.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you should be defined by that. It just means that your circumstances are shitty, and you got to find a way to deal with it.
Yeah. So with that, like during like my treatment, I was the same as yourself. Like you don't want to you feel shitty. You're not wanting antidepressants. You're not wanting, because it's life that's happening to you.
Yeah.
The kind of big thing, obviously, a stand-up comedian, you do it for a living. My way of getting through my treatment was to try and just use like my own source of comedy and fun and things like that. Like, do you think that's something that should be easier for people to kind of look at, just to try and see the situation as it's really crap, and it's shitty that you're going through chemo, but see, the way I always talk about it, me and my wife had some really funny moments within me going through treatment, man.
It's real funny. I mean, there's some really incredible experiences you go through when you go through a cancer diagnosis. It's mostly shit, but then you also have these incredible opportunities to like really like, you have these experiences where you're like, wow, we would never have like had this experience if not for cancer.
Yeah.
Like you become very close with people, because you all of a sudden are like you're like very vulnerable all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And it's like without the cancer diagnosis, you would never kind of be forced into that situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like, I mean, it sounds insane, but like there are like some benefits to your life from getting a cancer diagnosis. I mean, mostly it's very bad, particularly if it kills you. But if it doesn't kill you, there are some things that you can achieve from it that are pretty amazing that most people will never get close to achieving.
Yeah, I'm kind of testament to that. I was working as a nursing assistant in the hospital. Didn't really feel that I was kind of going anywhere as such. Didn't really have much ambition.
Yeah.
To now, I'm working for the charity that I credit for saving my life. I get to go out and talk to people. I'm bloody hosting a podcast. Like, like that's huge. And like you say, it's out of something really bad, you're able to turn it into something positive.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, I imagine without that diagnosis, you'd probably have a very different life.
Yeah, I wouldn't be sitting here today, probably. You know?
So I mean, it is interesting for me to reflect on my life. But like, I wonder, you know, I guess I don't think I've changed too much from my diagnosis because it's interesting because I spoke to someone recently who had cancer, and she said that it forced her to like change careers. It even led her to like leaving her partner at the time.
Right.
Because when you're just like forced to really confront mortality and the fact you only have perhaps something limited time on the planet, all of a sudden you make different choices.
Yeah. And
that was fascinating to hear. And I've spoken to a lot of people who have like, you know, got into cancer diagnosis, changed, and then all of a sudden changed careers, or left their partner or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, it was interesting in that I'd never felt like that because I always felt like doing comedy was the thing that I wanted to do. Yeah. And the person I was with was always like the person I wanted to be with. So I didn't really have those big like changes in terms of like my relationships or like my career. But yeah, it did force me to kind of like really just assess what I was doing with my life and really just check that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Because most people are not pursuing their goal, their dream. That's just a reality. Is that most people's lives are a series of compromises, and then all of a sudden, when you get told, "Oh, hey, you could be dead in like a year or two," you're like, "Well, no point compromising anymore." You know what I mean? Let's go out with a bang. So, yeah, it's interesting that and I think that is a benefit of being forced to confront with your own death. There's a really interesting like kind of like philosophical idea about how like for people to like exist, they have to deny that death is going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like if you think about you're going to die,
yeah,
like you just be walking around all day just like screaming and crying and bawling all the time. So like the whole point of like being like the only way that humans can exist is to deny, in their mind think they're never going to die.
Yeah.
But then also being forced to realize you're going to die can also force you to like achieve and be ambitious. So yeah, it's just an interesting, it's a fascinating paradox in like the human mind.
It was certainly one that I kind of confronted within my own roles as well. You know, like it's an ironic analogy, but I always felt like Sisyphus rolling the stone up the hill. You know, I always felt like that, you know, and it's like, and then once my cancer diagnosis happened and then you're faced with that, is this really what I want to be doing? You know, is there more? And then, you know, you get caught in that cycle of, but this is how I make my money. I'm in my 30s. Do I really want to change career? And then, you know, you have that cancer diagnosis and you go, no, do you know what? Stuff it like, and then you just start building that momentum of going, no, I do want to change this and I'll do what I'm going to try that. And then taking the leap to leave the NHS and go into the charity sector. You know, it was a huge thing, but one I'll never change really, you know, so.
Yeah, you're never going to regret that.
No, not even maybe. I mean, because I get to speak to guys like you as well, you know what I mean? Like, how amazing is it that's my job, you know?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, like, here we are.
Yeah.
I mean, like, our paths, these diagnoses have brought us together.
Yeah.
Which is very special, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I don't know, I think a lot about, this is a really fascinating quote from like Jim Carrey, who just talked about how like, his father was always really, really funny and like he always thought his father should have been in comedy or entertainment or something, but he just chose to be an accountant and just have like a regular job and, you know, he just wanted that stability and that was the compromise that he made in his life.
Yeah.
And then his father died young, like maybe in his 40s or 50s or something. And like Jim Carrey was like, oh, so you can take the safe option and still die? It's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my point is like, being forced to confront your limited time or that you might have limited time, makes you make different choices.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a huge benefit to some people.
Yeah. I think as well, it's like, it's that fear of making those different choices as well. I think that really gets people, you know, you having to kind of really stare down that crossroads and go, do I want to? Yeah, that it's such a hard thing. And, you know, facing that at some point in every walk of life, you know, everybody does it. And, you know, to have the courage to kind of go and do that is, it takes a lot. So, and here we are, you know. sitting here talking about testicular cancer.
Yeah, 100%.
You know?
2 balls between us.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
probably the first time these couches have had 2 guys and only 2 balls. You know? It's really, it's a unique thing to be part of.
Usually it's an odd number.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like the bowling balls. But I suppose as well, like, so see when you got so you got the all clear now? Is that you sitting, or you, because you're still really doing those?
Yeah, I mean, like, basically they say, look, we don't see any cancer in you.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've been told that before. So,
yeah,
you know, we just got to be careful and vigilant.
Yeah.
So my doctor's like, we think you're cured.
Yeah.
But we have to confirm that, and we won't be able to confirm it for another, you know, probably, I imagine another year or 2 or something. Roughly.
So see, like you live out in Australia, but you've moved to London. So did that care switch? You know, I know up in, up here in Scotland, it went from 10 years of being kind of looked after to like 5, and then that was you, like you were considered kind of done. Is that the same in Australia and in England, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've been told like kind of like 5 years is when like they like, okay, you don't have to come back here anymore. Yeah. But my doctor said to me, look, I kind of, if you have like 2 years where like we're not seeing anything, you know, just the chances of anything popping up after that are just like, it's basically never happened before. Yeah. So he's like, look, if he's basically said to me, like, if you kind of go for 2 years without kind of us seeing anything on scans or blood tests, you know, you can feel pretty confident about yourself. Yeah. So I think I'll be at that 2-year mark relatively soon, but I don't know. Maybe I probably won't feel good until we hit maybe 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? Despite what he tells me. So, but yes, and he's you know, he's one of the best testicular cancer doctors in the world. He treated me in Melbourne, and he's referred me to his colleague in London, who's another one of the best in the world. So I do feel like I'm in really good hands, and I can trust what they tell me. Yeah, you're pretty. But I'm also like, yeah, but okay, well, I'll relax maybe a year after you guys relax. You know what I mean? Yeah.
This is maybe way too a personal question, but it's just so after you kind of got your operation stuff, did you go for the implant, or did you just?
Great question. Yeah. Not personal at all. I talk about it on stage all the time. No, I did not get the implant because my urologist just said, he kind of advised me against it. Really, he said, look, I've done it for some men, and sometimes they come back and say it's uncomfortable, I want you to take it out. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well then let's just, I mean, it's purely aesthetic, which I think is very funny. Just because I think balls there's not much you can do to make balls better looking. No. Do you know what I mean? I've always taken the less is more approach to testicles, because I don't think they're particularly attractive to anyone, particularly women. So, but no, my doctor, but you know, you do hear the fact that like if you're a young guy, you're 18, 19, 20, and you lose a testicle, and then you're going out and you're, you know, dating women or whatever, you know, that there might come a point where you have to explain why there's only one testicle in your ball sack. Yeah. And maybe they want to have the replacement there just so they can delay having that conversation or perhaps never have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can see there's obviously that benefit to it. Yeah. But I was like, no, I'll just have the one. That's fine. As long as it does the job, it's fine.
I was the same. I didn't opt for it either. There wasn't even a bit of me thought about going for it either. Like I'm not the type that my masculinity is tied to my testicles.
Yes. I think there's also that, which is a weird thing as well. Yeah. Men are like, but I want to have balls, so I'm a man. And it's like, well, that's a pretty lame way to kind of define your masculinity, that you got a little plastic thing in your balls.
That makes you feel like a man.
Yeah, no, that's even lamer. That's awful. I hate that. So, but I mean, look, I'm sure that, whatever men have to do to feel good about themselves, go for it. You're not harming anyone else. But that was my approach to it.
If that's what makes you feel better after it as well,
go for it. Put 3 balls in there. Have an extra one if it makes you feel better.
See, they didn't offer that.
They should offer the 3rd.
Just like
should be able to compensate.
Just like that David Bowie thing, in Labyrinth. Let's just go for that.
Those makes me those those perpetual motion device with a ball sitting in it.
Yeah.
Put one of those in. Just have always
clicking.
You're just always clicking for the rest of your life if that's what you need to feel like a man.
Could you imagine?
That people could just hear you coming down the corridor a mile away.
There's Colin coming down the street.
Always clicking that man. He wants everyone to know.
No. I had to endure the fact that my name's Paul and I've only got one ball. So, I've been one ball Paul.
One ball Paul. Lucky you didn't have when you were a kid, otherwise the kids would be merciless.
Well, yeah. Oh, to be fair though, maybe it's karma because we did have a guy in school who was also called Paul, who had an undescended testicle.
So was he called?
And he was called one, but he had two balls, but he was still called one ball Paul.
He's pretty stiff, isn't he?
Yeah, so
pretty unlucky to get that moniker.
Yeah,
and so there you were.
No,
did you call him one ball Paul?
I probably did at one point.
Well, that's your karma, isn't it?
Karma, right? Yeah, I probably did at one point.
God was like, "Fuck this guy."
He's like, "Listen,
I know what you did."
Yeah,
that was your atonement.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But it was, that was the good thing, though, I think, like when I was going through treatment and having mates who were able just to kind of make those jokes as well. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of touched on it earlier, about having that good support network and things like that.
The worst is when people won't make jokes. That's awful. Do you know what I mean? It's like, no, you don't patronise me by not making jokes about me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Make fun of me, please.
100%.
Because you would have before.
Do you know what's funny? Because I did a gig where when I was like in between chemo and I obviously looked bald and everything, and do you know that movie? There's a movie I Am Legend with Will Smith, and it's like there's like one of those zombie movies and all the zombies are out to killing whatever. Anyway, like I went on stage and then like afterwards the host came on afterwards and made a joke how I looked like one of the zombies or whatever from that movie, and I thought it was really funny. I'm like laughing, and there were people in the crowd who were like, people laughed, and then also people in the crowd were like, "Whoa, can you say whatever?" I thought it was funny, and I was laughing to let everyone know like, no, this is fine.
Yeah.
But then anyway, then the MC messaged me the next day, be like, "Hey, just sorry about that joke last night. Like I didn't mean to. Like I'm sorry if you're upset or anything about it." And I was like, I'm upset that you apologized. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's funny. Like, I'm more upset at the fact that you would think that you have to apologize to me. Like, I get where it's coming from, but I think it's patronizing to not make jokes about a group of people.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had colleagues, working in the health board and things like that. You see lots of various things, and even like the mention of like, because I'll still go, God, that's worse than getting a kick in the balls,
Yeah.
And making it plural. And somebody will turn around and go, ball. And it'll be this big laugh and this. And then, hours later, they'll be like, listen, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I'm like, yes, you should have. That's why you said it, because it's funny.
Dude, I reckon I have like maybe almost the exact same situation I work. So I used to work on this TV show on Channel 10. And we're in like the meeting with like the panel who were like pretty famous people in Australia. So I won't say name names, whatever, but really like in the meeting we were talking about what's on the show that day. And it just happened to like something about men losing a testicle just happened to come up in conversation outside of, it wasn't related to me at all. And then one of the people on the show who's very, very famous, she goes, just like as a joke, she's like, nothing sadder than a man with one testicle, And like, it was in that context, it was very funny. Mm-hmm. But then she looked, and then she like knew me, and then she was like, and then she looked at me and was like, oh, like, I mean, obviously it's a joke. I'm like, fuck off. That's funny. Like, don't apologize to me. That's a very funny thing to say. So yeah, I think when people feel awkward around you, that's when it feels weird,
Yeah. So have you seen what's the Australian TV show? Colin from Accounts. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, but like I know it's a big show. Yeah,
and it's the guy, the kind of main guy in it's had testicular cancer.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes out of the blue because you don't really expect it at first day, and it was such a unique way of kind of talking about testicular cancer, but not really talking about it at the same time. It's really, really good. Like, and like typical, like, like things coming out of Australia, it's really funny. You know what I mean? So it's like
there's a few funny Australians. They pop up every now and again.
Yeah, so they kind of do all right.
Yeah.
It's like I said to my wife, I says, Michael's made it into my top 3 favourite Australians of all time. So,
I'll take that. Who are the other two?
Oh, well, Colin, the dog from Colin from Accounts, and Joe Mangle.
And so who?
Joe Mangle from Neighbours.
Oh, that's so funny.
He was the greatest character on TV when I was growing up. Joe Mangle was a hero to everybody.
It's funny to me, by the way, just how big Neighbours is in the UK.
Yeah.
Because in Australia, it's kind of like a bit of a punchline. It's like it's long-running soap opera that no one really in Australia watches anymore.
Yeah.
We watched in like maybe the 80s or the 90s or whatever.
Yeah, when it was first new and exciting.
When it was new, Colin Minogue was on it, we were like, this
yeah.
is big. But now it's just on like one of those, satellite channels now in Australia. But then I come to London and I see like billboards and like posters. I'm like, what is this parallel universe where Neighbours is big?
Mate, see when Harold Bishop got swept away off that rock, I've never cried so much in my life.
Oh my gosh.
Honest to God, like see,
it was that and the Queen dying. Those are the two things that really upset the UK the most.
It pretty much did.
Yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't be bringing up the royal family in Scotland. I apologise.
No, it's all right.
It's a point of contention, I know.
But yeah, honestly, yeah, it's just so interesting though to kind of sit and talk to somebody like this and that kind of have that long form conversation about testicular cancer as well, and be able to kind of have a laugh. And I think that's really what we're trying to kind of do as well. Is like just let's say, it's like the conversation we literally just had is. It's okay to laugh about cancer, it's like especially if you've
it's crazy not to.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I feel like cause I once did like an interview in a newspaper and they surprisingly actually put a quote of mine in context basically and I was basically saying like I think cancer can be funny. Like I think anything can be funny, including cancer.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, someone messaged me on Facebook after being like, I just read your article and was like, well, I want you to know that I've got breast cancer and I don't find anything funny about it. I'm like, okay, well, sorry that you can't laugh at your own cancer. That's something for you to deal with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the way that I deal with my cancer is to talk about it and laugh at it. And I think that talking about cancer on stage and making it is so important, so important to destigmatize and make people feel comfortable talking about it and laughing about it. So yeah, I think, I understand where those people come from, but I just think that they're wrong. And I think that it kind of can harm themselves and also just harm, the cancer community more broadly.
Yeah. Well, I think it harms the stigma around it and talking about it.
Yeah.
One of the kind of big things that I always bring up in my talks is, at school, girls were always taken away and they were talked about like their periods and things like that. And us boys were just left in a classroom, not talking about anything.
Yeah, we're like, what's going on over there?
What's happening?
Are they all syncing up? What's happening over there?
What's going on?
Yeah. It's so true. It's like, that's interesting. Like when you do like sex, it is similar because when you do sex education and they separate the boys and the girls, it just makes it like, then both sides are wondering like, what the fuck's going on over there? Like, and it just creates there's more ignorance around it and and then it creates more barriers between, I can see that similarity. Yeah. That when you don't talk about something, it just makes it stranger and eventually you're going to have to learn about it.
Exactly.
So, anyway, it's a good point.
Yeah. And that's why we're trying to kind of get into schools and educate it for a younger age. You hear the argument that, no, you don't want to, because you don't want to frighten kids about cancer. But you can't have that message like that, oh no, you don't want to kind of talk about cancer, but at the same time talk about early detection.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that work then? So
look, I'm not a parent, so I don't really kind of relate to that whole idea of you got to protect the kids. And like I get obviously got to protect kids, but also like there's got to be a point where you tell them that Santa Claus isn't real. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone has to have that moment. Everyone has to. And then what about like when you're a kid and your grandparents die? Like that's when you start to learn about death. Yeah. Or when a pet dies, like, so I'm not saying you teach the kindergartners about that they're all going to die, but I'm just saying like
these existential.
All right, kids, we got some hard truths for you. I know you're 3, you just finished finger painting, but Santa Claus isn't real and your parents are going to die. Like that's a harsh day at school. But I'm not saying that. But yeah, I mean there has to be a point where it is. I don't know what the system's like in the UK, but no one in Australia really talks about. There's no like part of the curriculum where people talk about like I don't know health and cancer and death and grief and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It does strike me as strange that isn't.
Are you part of like embedded in the curriculum as such?
Yeah, given that it would be so important to so many kids' lives.
I think it's getting better now. Certainly when I was a kid, it wasn't. Like even when I was in high school, you know, it wasn't something that was touched on. But I think now we're seeing that, you know, because we're getting invited into schools that that it's people that's our age, so it's guys and girls who weren't taught about this stuff, so they're going, no, rather than be in a situation where we're facing no information like we did, let's teach our kids. And obviously it's all at the appropriate time, the appropriate age limit and things like that. But actually I find some of the schools that I've went to, the kids have been so responsive in comparison to like some of the football clubs that we've went into. You know, the kids are like really engaged and really want to know and learn more. They come up and talk to you afterwards, whereas, you know, you went to some places and it's like, they're out. You know, like, I think it does help at a school though, also because like you're like a cool guy, you know, at the school. Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of climbing up in those years, mate.
But you know, they're probably like, oh, like he's not a teacher. Do you know what I mean? Like this is cool. You know, so I think you've got an opportunity with the kids there.
Yeah.
Whereas I walk to a football club, they're like,
this guy.
Yeah. I don't know. So maybe there's just a different kind of energy there.
I think because I walk in and it's like in a school, and one of the first slides is all the different words for testicles. So like,
well, that's the,
you know, so you just talk about that and you rhyme them off, and somebody's saying balls and gullies at school. So
I mean that you're going to have them for you got them in the palm of your hand after that.
Yeah, literally and metaphorically.
Here we go. Now we're cooking.
But no, it's good to be able to kind of do that and talk to the like anybody that will listen to us talk bollocks. Essentially, you know, I think that's a good thing, and you know, having support from, you know, people like yourself, you know, and you know, having our other ambassadors come on and just like listen to this message. It's not an overly complicated message for testicular cancer. It's check your balls once a month. You know, it's
not that hard. Yeah,
it's not. I mean, we're lucky we only have to do it for a minute now rather than 2 minutes. But
yeah, we've saved so much time.
Oh, he's cut that time right in half.
In fact, I would recommend to the men listening, just take a ball out already.
Well, exactly.
Halve your chance of getting cancer.
Yeah.
Half the time you spend in the shower. Yeah. It's great.
And like you've already kind of said in your stand-up, you look great in skinny jeans.
You look great. You can finally, that's true. You'll be able to wear skinny jeans. A lot more air to breathe. A lot more room around the crotch.
Yep.
There are benefits. Yeah. There are benefits.
Although, like you wouldn't know it to look at me, but I started doing spin classes.
Oh, great.
And so being on a
so much easier.
Honestly.
Mate, that's genuinely another huge benefit for me too.
Yeah, I didn't realise that having 2 testicles would be a hindrance to sitting on a bike.
Oh, it limits your options. It limits the way. Maybe that's why Lance Armstrong was so good at.
Just maybe he was wanting another one to go as well. You know.
Maybe that was the real advantage.
Yeah,
the real advantage wasn't the APO. It was he actually had one ball.
Exactly.
That was what really should have got him out in the end.
It was more aerodynamic. That's exactly.
More aerodynamic. It's always like, you know, you can like sit in different. You can like shift your weight around much more easily on the bike seat. We're not worried about crushing a ball.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's we've really come full circle here.
We have.
Yeah, I love this. That's a great theory. That was really Lance Armstrong's real benefit.
Yeah, that is actually, it wasn't cheating with EPO, it was losing the
test. I've been trying to find a new angle on Lance Armstrong for, I would say, 6 years.
There you go.
And I reckon we've just found a new angle that I might be able to explore on stage one day.
And you should. Just remember when...
Well, I've been looking for new material on cancer. I'm like, well, now we've got the Lance Armstrong idea.
Well, exactly.
Guys, if you come and see me at a show in the future and I'm talking about Lance Armstrong, know that this was the podcast that started the kernel of the idea.
Yeah. It's going to go down as one of your greatest jokes. I can feel it.
Yeah, it's an all-timer.
That'll be the one that people will be shouting, you know.
Do the Lance Armstrong bit. I'll be calling, I'll do the encore, Lance Armstrong bit.
There's one time, I was on a podcast.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, in terms of kind of doing checks and stuff like that, you still regularly kind of checking yourself, doing that kind of...
Yeah, like I'm really aware of, you know, what it feels like when you have cancer and stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, like, I mean, because the chances of it coming back in like the second testicle are like just crazy low. So I guess I don't have to worry about it coming back in my other testicle. Yeah. But like I'll obviously do like check and like, I think there was one time where I was like, oh, like I thought I felt like something in the other one just because I'm crazy neurotic. So I went in for an ultrasound and they were like, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like it's.
I done the exact same thing, by the way.
Yeah.
It just suddenly was like, no, I've got cancer.
Yeah.
And it was in the midst of like the in between scans and things. I was like, no, please get me in there.
Yeah. I think I'm sure it must be a very common occurrence when you've had it once. But like, I was being like overly cautious. But my doctors were happy to humor me just to make me kind of relax and whatever. But like obviously, like I know what to look out for. You know, if it changes in size or if there's like a firmness or anything like that. Yeah. I think one thing is that a lot of men are like, oh, I'll have cancer when I'm pissing blood. That's how I'll know. And it's like, no, that's not how. Like if you're pissing blood, you're dead already. Yeah. So like, a lot of the times like that's not really, you don't really feel anything. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no pain associated. A lot of times there's no pain and it's so it's just your ball might be changing shape or feeling different or something in some way. So that's kind of the good thing about that type of cancer is like you can actually just like see it and spot it yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas, not all cancers you can actually just see with your own eyes. Mm-hmm. So so I guess it's one of those ones where it's like you can actually just deal with it really early and effectively if you're kind of smart about it.
It's one of the things I always say as well, like when I'm going out, it's like you don't need any equipment apart from your hands, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's it,
Yeah, like women have to go to bloody get the mammogram and do the machine and stuff.
You just have to get in a hot bath or a hot shower.
Yeah. And let's be honest, you're probably going to be around that area anyway. So,
exactly. So, it's just true though. Like, I mean, as guys who got our hands down our pants bloody often enough.
All the time. You see those guys that are just like they try to warm their hands by putting their hands like down their pants. And I'm like, well, I mean, while you're down there, you might as well just see if you got cancer or not. But I mean, it's such an easy thing to do. So I just do it,
So obviously, it's kind of like this with this podcast, we're trying to make it as kind of as far reaching and hopefully, the people who come on and listen to it take something away from it. Is there any advice that you would give to somebody who is at any point of their cancer journey, testicular cancer journey, that you learned through yours that, if somebody had told you this, you would have appreciated it?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, the only thing I would say, one thing that really helped me was like I spoke to like another person who had just like gone through the treatment that I was about to go through. And at the same hospital, and he was just like, gave me great advice on like, okay, first day you get in, make sure you got a good pillow because like the pillows they give you a shit, bring your own pillow in. And then they were like, okay, and then like they'll bring you food, and it's like, okay, like breakfast is good, lunch is shit. Just like that kind of like real minute details about the experience that were really particular to like the hospital I was in and like the treatment I was going through. Like just that. So if you're like going through it or you're about to start it, it's really handy to speak to someone who's just done it. Yeah. Because they can give you all that kind of advice. And the other thing that I think probably just applies broadly is that I think that everyone's cancer experience is very unique in the sense that everyone's cancer is like diagnosed at a slightly different stage. Is going to be like a slightly different type of tumor, and your treatment, how it responds to treatment is going to be different. How you respond to treatment is going to be different. So it's just really important you take that into account, understand how like unique your situation is, because you always want to look at the data and the stats and be like, oh, okay, well this person went through the cancer and then they died, so I'm going to die. Or this person went through the cancer and they only had to do like one cycle of chemo and they were cured, so that's going to happen to me. And it's like, you can't really kind of base how you're going to go through your treatment based on what other people have been through. I mean, like data and stats are useful for like when doctors are prescribing medicine and working out what's going to be the best thing to work for you. But yeah, the way that you respond individually is always going to be really unique to you. So I think it's just so important to like just, get, I guess, base, how you feel about your situation on like your doctor and your team who know you and your case specifically, rather than trying to base how you feel about things off data and what's happening in this latest research with this drug. Because I just feel like all of that is kind of a bit remote to to your individual experience.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. Like, I never really thought about that, but yeah, to not focus on data. You know what I mean?
I would do that because I was doing that heaps. Like when I was getting data, I was like, okay, I was researching. Okay, this is the treatment they give me. How many people survive after 6 months or 12 months, 5 years, whatever? I'm like, yeah, like I was reading that, you know, and sometimes it made me feel better, sometimes it made me feel worse. But it was kind of pretty irrelevant because, you know, this is like data that's just based on thousands of men who have got different stages of cancer, different types of cancer, or whatever, you know what I mean? So, you know, it was kind of like not, you know, maybe it would make me feel better in a moment, but also make me then feel not better at other moments. So, yeah, I think just staying, just getting the information from like your doctor, you know, the person who knows your case specifically, I think is really what you can base, you know, your outlook on, rather than trying to, you know, find stories in the news or research papers that might make you feel better or might make you feel worse. You know, all that stuff is, I think, kind of unhelpful to look at overall. Yeah.
It's just going to make a muddled picture for you as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because you'll be like, well, my doctor said this to me, but now I'm looking at this data and this says something else. And it's like, I think you have to, like, you know, hopefully your doctor knows what they're doing. And usually they do. If they're an oncologist, they've probably, you know, got a lot of experience and they've probably treated a lot of people and they've done it for many, many years. So I think you just have to like trust the doctor, the nurse, the team that's treating you, because they know your staging, they know what type of tumor it is, they know what kind of chemo you're going through, they know your blood counts, they know your liver results, your kidney function, they know all that stuff. That's all really unique and personal to you. So that's kind of where you have to, you know, get your information from. Yeah.
Excellent. No, thanks very much for giving me that insight as well. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Mate, thanks for having me. I'll say I didn't really even know at the start that when the podcast had started, because I thought we were just having a great chat. And then I'm like half an hour and I'm like, oh, I think this is the podcast. So that's a real testament to you. I didn't even realize we were doing a podcast.
That's a real testament to the guys here as well.
Yeah.
Cam, you know, so it's
I was like, oh, I think there's a red light there. I think it's rolling. So yeah, thanks for making it so chill and so fun. And I apologize if I said anything in the first 30 minutes of the podcast that should not go to air, because I was like, no, not at all. I think it was all really honest and good.
Yeah, it really helped me as well, you know, being my first podcast and stuff. So it definitely helped me.
No, it was great. I like it. Yeah. Don't tell people when you're rolling. No, I think it's good. Because it's like, oh, you'll just get like a really smooth
transition.
Now you're getting,
that was the advice I got. Well, you know, so,
now you're getting, you know, this is this is just like the director's cut of the podcast where we analyze the podcast at the end. It's great.
So this is kind of your time to kind of say like where, you know, where people can find you, where they can see your comedy.
Find me on social media, just at Michael Shafar. It's Michael and then Shafar, Shafar. I'm on all the platforms. You can check me out there. And I've got a comedy special on YouTube that's called All Right Next Joke. Right, there are some cancer jokes in there if you want to check that out. And I've got a podcast as well. It comes out every week. It's not about cancer, it's just me talking about the news, which is a much sadder topic actually usually. So yeah, that's called Topical with Michael Shafar. You can find that on all the apps. So check me out and come to a show next time I'm in your city.
Well, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.